Hello, it's Scott Manley here, and I'm going to do another one of these Kerbal quick challenges. Now, somebody has asked, and I've actually said it's quite easy, but somebody has asked, can I build an aircraft which can fly in reverse, or specifically can land in reverse? And the obvious way to do this is to have a set of wings which will be either in front of or behind the center of mass, depending upon what direction it's flying. So we're just going to put a standard aircraft fuselage together here with extra fuel tanks, stick on the engine at the back, and that will more or less be the framework. Now, what we have right now is the center of mass is there, but if I defuel these rear ones, you'll see that the center of mass moves forward. So what we want is to have wings that sits about there, because when we reverse this, when we fuel up these, we want the wings to be on the other side. And we also want a vertical stabilizer, and we want control surfaces. And so yeah, I mean, if it hooks in just about there, we should be set. But actually what I'm going to do is use a pair of wings here to make this work. So first of all, swept wings. The swept wings are going to work here, and I'm going to put these here. These will be providing some lift when we're in reverse. And make sure, if I stick these here, okay, I'm trying to remember where my center of mass actually was. If I slide these backwards just a bit, we should get closer. And then we're going to have some control surfaces on there, obviously, on both of these wings. Now, I'm using two wings simply because I need more lift. The more lift this thing has, the more stable it's likely to be. Okay. So let's test that. Let's fuel in the front. This is the lift-off configuration where we have extra fuel in front. Look at that. Brilliant. You see, center of mass is exactly where we need it to be. So it will be stable in forward flight during liftoff, and then once we defuel it, it will be stable in reverse flight. We also need vertical stabilizers. And we need a pair of we need a vertical stabilizer that more or less sits exactly there. The only problem is it's going to sit more or less right through that thing, right through the cockpit. What do you call that thing the pilot sits in? Yes, right through that cockpit thing. Let's do this. I'm going to have two of these that meet exactly here and have little tail fins on them. There we go. So that's going to provide absolutely terrible visuals, but hey, at least the pilot can feel cool because it looks kind of like a shark or something like that. Okay. And need to get this on the back. So we do need to have some fins for lateral control. And that should help us a little. Obviously trying to turn off the pitch and yaw on these. Turn off pitch and yaw, or pitch and roll, sorry. We don't need roll on that. Turn off the yaw. Turn off the yaw. And then finally is the hardest part. We need to have landing gear. And the landing gear will probably kill us. And the hardest part next is having the landing gear, because the landing gear is the thing that will more or less be likely to make or break this endeavor. So it will probably kill us several times before we actually get it right. So there we go, got that there, and you know what, maybe I'll shift that forwards just a touch. And then we need to have a set back about here. I guess I could stick him on the wing. Let's try that. That's probably a disaster waiting to happen, because we will be really, well, I don't know, let's see how that goes. Let's call it RSP, reversible, no wait, it's not a space plane, reversible plane. So let's see how this flies. Are we ready? Look at that. It looks like it's got a giant mohawk or something, right? Bob Kerman is the man in charge here. And there we go. Building up speed, and because we get extra wings, we lift off very quickly. Thankfully. Look at that! Now let's try flying this like an aircraft. Hey, look at that! Totally flies. Totally flies. Beautiful! Beautiful! I could probably put the gear up even. I could feel really confident in my chances here by lifting the gear up. I could fly for hours and hours on this amount of fuel, or it could fly for a decent amount of time depending upon how I adjust its thrust. One last buzz off the tower. Look at that. Yay! Okay, so now I need to prepare for landing, right? So I'm going to have to reverse, and I could aim for the runway, but I'm going to aim for the green area next to the runway, simply because I'm probably going to have a terrible time trying to steer this thing, since the steering will more or less be reversed. So to transition to reverse flight, I'm going to go into a steep vertical climb somewhere out this way, and then pump the fuel backwards, cut the engine, and hopefully transition perfectly into reverse flight mode. RFM, as they say. Okay, so I think, are we going far enough yet? That's far enough. Yeah, so the rotation is reversed when I'm looking at it like this. It gets kind of confusing. So here we go, getting altitude and speed. We more or less will want to be going straight up here, because if we're not going straight up, then we could end up coming out of this backwards. Oh, I completely forgot. Let's disable torque so that we're doing this entirely aerodynamically, right? Okay, transfer fuel in or out, depending upon whether you're in the front or the back. We're up to like 8 kilometers. Let's cut the engine power and start to decelerate as the engine loses its grip and gravity reasserts itself, pulling the vehicle inexorably into a reverse slide, which is actually a real maneuver, believe it or not. Okay, I need to transfer fuel in. And I don't know how stable this will be, because I've got a little bit of fuel left in the front here. It could entirely... I could find out. Okay, here we go. And we're slipping backwards just a little. But that's looking pretty good. I think we're still feeling a little unstable. I'm going to make sure I get all the fuel in there. Okay, so now, push the nose down and see how well we respond. Looks like we respond pretty well, although there's some stability issues. Okay, so I'm going to more or less try to hold some sort of... I got to get out of this dive, that's the first thing. And if I find that I am unable to pull out of this dive, I'm going to have to quickly transfer fuel. Because otherwise, I could be that I have actually made it far too stable in one direction. And you know what? It actually feels like it might be that way. I'm going to transfer some fuel forwards just to help here. Let's try balancing these two. Okay, that's getting some lift there. Being very careful to make sure I have some control. This is requiring quite a bit of concentration here. Pardon me for not actually narrating it with nearly the same level of vigor and vim that I would normally attribute to a descent. This is not something I'm familiar with. Okay, actually, let's just transfer all this fuel forwards out. Okay, we are far too stable. Oh, out. Come on. Come on, get that tail up. Get the tail up. Oh, out. Okay, this is engines! Okay, hey look, we survived! It did kind of fly backwards. It didn't actually land backwards, but you know, I'm confident. Look at that thing, eh? That's really going for a trip. Like a whole 3 meters per second. You know, I'm wondering... Nah, I guess you could chase that in a rover. That's how quickly this thing is flying. Wonderful. Okay, let's revert flight to launch, and we're going to try that again. Okay, so we don't need to have nearly so much weight backwards, but that's fine. We know where we're going here. So I'm just going to more or less transition straight into the correct type of flight. It should also be noted that the control systems in Kerbal Space Program are smart enough to reverse the flap's direction depending upon the direction of motion. So actually, everything works the way it should. Okay, stability control enabled. I'm just going to more or less flip over this way because I want to come at it from this direction. Why not? It's better to reverse into the land than it is to reverse into the ocean, apparently. So, of course, what inspired this whole challenge was the fact that at Boston Airport yesterday, a Southwest Airlines aircraft managed to reverse into a JetBlue aircraft. And as a result, it is Amy's birthday, and she is still stuck in Boston. So, yeah. That's great. That's unfortunate, but yeah, crazy things happen and all that. Okay, I'm not even going to bother pulling in the landing gear this time. Definitely going to work on the altitude though. So, as soon as I get stable reverse flight, I will start pumping fuel back into the kind of stable configuration. Hopefully, that will help me. Okay, pointing that way. Just going to get this vertical vector more or less where I want it. Okay, now start transferring fuel backwards. In. Cut power. Cut power. Not cat power. Cut power. Cat power, of course, being a musician who I quite enjoy listening to. Okay, so speed is dropping. 150, 140, 130 will be about 13 seconds of 0G as gravity reasserts itself once more. We can see the clouds serenely passing below as they go about their business, being all cloud-like, dealing with, you know, making the weather and stopping people getting sunburns and things like that. Okay, so let's try pulling out of this dive a little now, or pushing out of this dive technically, because we're pushing the stick forward, right? None of this pulling business, we're all about pushing. Okay, and I'm gonna transfer this fuel forwards. Oh, no. Transfer, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I honestly don't know what I'm gonna do here. Let's try that. Transfer fuel. Oh, that's given us more stability here. I'm just hoping that it doesn't give me too much stability, or it doesn't give me make me unstable again. So this is it. You know, if you have your center of mass and your center of lift too far displaced, then you become you go from being stable into being a lawn dart. Let's see how that works. Oh, that might work. Maybe. Just trying to hold this descent pattern. You know, it might be that if I had less fuel in it, I would be more stable as well. Lighter. Lighter, that's the word. Let's try transferring the fuel forwards to this thing and seeing if I can perhaps... Oh, come on! This is just oscillating here. Just fire up the engine! Oh, well, again, this is a very stable way to... a very safe way to land, apparently. Even if the aircraft is destroyed, the pilot seems quite able to cope with the rigors of the descent. Let's turn the engines off. Let's go back to the spaceplane hangar and see perhaps there's something I can do here to make it better. Now, what I thought, maybe I should actually reverse the control surfaces on this. Okay, we've got to put 2 of these on. There we go. Just check center of mass, center of lift. You know what? I'm going to get rid of this fuel here. Yes. And you know what? I think if we get rid of some of this fuel as well, it'll make my plane lighter and therefore easier to land. Okay, so toggle torque. Now, there were actually a couple of aircraft designed to land in reverse, but not like this. There's a few tail-sitter designs that were tried by the US. There's like the Convair Pogo, and there's an X-13, I think, that's called the Vertijet. They basically were designed so that they could land on, you know, helicopter pads on, say, regular ships rather than aircraft carrier. You know, you would come down on the engine, more or less. Of course, nobody mass-produced these. They were horrendously difficult to land because the pilot was kind of looking over their shoulder while trying to throttle an engine which had, you know, throttle lag and all those other nice problems. If you've ever tried to land on a jet engine, on a VTOL in Kerbal Space Program, you'll appreciate that jet engines do experience a significant amount of lag. And the reason, of course, being that inside this there is a whole spinning turbine system, and that has momentum. And, you know, the longer, as you try to change it, the momentum will counteract whatever you're trying to do, more or less. It will want to remain at the same speed. It'll take some time. But anyway, let's get into this vertical climb. It's a good thing we have an excellent thrust-to-weight ratio on this aircraft. Not a spacecraft, it's not designed to do this just yet, We have plenty of spacecraft that land in reverse, the Dragon capsule being an obvious example of one, or the Dragon Mark II being an obvious example of the one that we'd like to see happening for real. Okay, transfer fuel in here, or sorry, in here. Let's just do that quickly. Hopefully I won't lose stability here. That's the danger, that if I do this, then I could find myself perhaps unstable for long enough and find myself in a spin. And as I've turned off as I've turned off this, it's going to make things slightly harder. Okay, there we go. And now in reverse, Excellent. Okay, now start to push out of this dive and see how much control we have. Perhaps with a ton less fuel we will be a little more sprightly. And we still have fuel here to balance us out. Liquid fuel here. Oh. We're 11 kilometers up and descending very, very rapidly. But I think this might actually be the one. This might have solved the problem simply by adjusting the fuel load and, of course, the distribution of the flaps. So by moving those flaps forward, of course, I've moved them away from the center of mass and I get much, much more control. Okay, so this does actually appear to be controllable. Now it's just a question of making sure that I get the correct descent path, the correct approach angle, so that I don't end up pummeling into the ground at incredible speed. Okay, oh, wrong way. Okay, bring the gear down. Prepare for landing. We all know that this is going to make it, right? Well, at least based on previous experience, you're going to make it. I don't know about the aircraft, Bill. Of course, we're landing tricycle gear with the front ones being lower. I'm not sure this is actually a configuration that has ever been used in real aircraft. But the other thing is, of course, once we get close to the ground, we can actually fire up that engine and control our brake very, very quickly so that we don't need to worry about asymmetrical braking causing us grief. Here we go. 70, 60, 74... Just reading out numbers too quickly for me to pay attention. 100 meters and throttle up. Hey, brilliant! Brilliant! And you know what's best about this, of course, is we can just take the fuel and pump it forwards, and in but a moment we will be flying like a regular aircraft once more, except it'll be a regular aircraft with something that looks like a crazy Mohican hairstyle. Bill Kerman, you should be proud for pulling that off. Give yourself a round of applause. Oh, he actually did it! He actually gave himself a round of applause. Well, that's us, yes. And we take off into the air. Mission successful. I'm Scott Manley. Regardless of which direction you may be travelling, fly safe.